Welcome to Your Soul's Therapist podcast. I'm your host, Vlada de Sousa. This show is on a mission to offer you a space to understand yourself more deeply, expand your worldview, heal your heart, and elevate your energy. If you're looking for safe and grounded tools to support your healing journey, then this show is for you. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Joya, it's such a joy to welcome you to your Soul's Therapist podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Really appreciate it.
Well, I will from the beginning honestly confess to listeners how I met you. And that was actually, I was looking for a couples therapist for me and my husband. And I discovered you. I wanted only IFS informed therapist, obviously. And I discovered that in internal family systems, there is this whole department that is focused on love, relationship, and couples. And that's where I found you. And even though, unfortunately, you didn't get to become our therapist due to some challenges around location and things like that, but it's so great that we connected and that I get to ask you all these important questions about couples, relationship, love.
Yes, I'm so excited.
My first question would be, tell us a little bit more. How did you find yourself in IFS movement, exploring IFS therapy, and obviously how that took you to the couples therapy world, intimacy from the inside out?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of amazing and magical how life works sometimes because the same summer that I met IFS, that I went to my first workshop of internal family systems therapy, which was 14 years ago this summer. I also met my husband that same summer. And what I would say is that it was a summer of finding both a path that would lead me to understanding myself and understanding human relationships in a way that made it a lot easier to relate to myself and to be in a relationship and to sort of believe that relationships are possible, and finding romantic love that it was the perfect external relationship to do this work in. So the universe kind of delivered both to me in the same summer. And this was the beginning of this journey for me. Yeah.
The significant summer.
Yes.
And what was the moment you started your relationship with your, I don't know, it's a partner or a husband, and also you started exploring IFIO at the same time?
Yeah, so I started studying internal family systems therapy. I took initially a workshop with Richard Schwartz, the founder of IFS, and Sarah Stewart, another colleague of his, in the summer of 2012. And then I started my IFS level 1 training with Toni Herbine-Blank, who is the founder of Intimacy from the Inside Out, which is a model that was partly built on IFS as well as some other things. And she was my first trainer. So her way of teaching IFS was very relational. And although I actually at that time had no interest in couple therapy, I did not see myself as someone who would really dive deep into couple therapy, as my experiences with couple therapy were actually not great. I was not in love with couple therapy. My first experiences with it were quite awful. I just started to feel this sense of hope that couple therapy could be very different from the way that I had learned it, and that relationships could be very different from the way that I had perceived them to be.
I'm really, really curious to see what was the contrast, what gave you that sense of hope that, couples therapy can be different and actually relationship can be different. What gave you that sense of hope and insight?
Yeah. So I think, initially when I first started doing couple therapy, I did not have a lot of training. And so a lot of it was just being thrown in. And I think couple therapy is I am now in love with it. I do have great love for it, obviously, if if I'm an IFIO trainer, but it definitely didn't start that way because I think it's not the kind of thing that one should do without a lot of training and a lot of coaching and a lot of support because I love it because it's the moment when rather than talking about like in individual therapy, a lot of people talk about their romantic relationships or their important friendships, family relationships, the relationships that really matter. But it's sort of like something that's out there, something that, that I'm referring to. Oh, and he said this, they said that, she said this, they did that. But when we are with a couple or a family, we're there in the moment with the person that matters and it's happening live in front of us. So it's like the moment, the possibilities of change are so great because it's like unfolding right there, right then and there. And we can be a compassionate witness and a coach and a supporter to the relationship in that moment. So it's really an exciting moment of change. But when I first started doing couple therapy, it just felt like I was thrown in the lion's den. Like, oh my God, I'm just here. There's all this conflict. It's so intense. People are at their most, primal kind of state, dysregulated. And I just would leave those couple therapy sessions in a state of total dysregulation myself and sort of like, how can I help their nervous systems if my nervous system is such a mess? So I really needed a roadmap. I really needed a way to feel like there was a method to the madness. And of course, there are many different models. There are many different ways that people can learn to do that work, but I needed one that really resonated with my own inner world. And I was very lucky to find that with IFS and IFIO.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I can only imagine when you are thrown into someone's life and there is all this raw energy, and that can be deeply unsettling, I can imagine. But also when you have perspective of parts and you already can approach what's going on right in the room between two people from the perspective, oh, that part is triggered by that part, this protector is triggered by this protector, it kind of gives us a little bit more clarity of what creates this whole fire, right? And then you becoming that mediator between protectors of both in the couple. And yes, you're becoming the godmother, the facilitator of that possibility of healing, of change, of the moment where protectors finally start listening instead of just talking at each other, right? I'm just really curious. What do you see in the moment when you are sitting with a couple and there is this raw, explosions and everything
Yeah.
is on fire? Where do you begin? Where do you begin really offering this mediation to their systems, to their dysregulated, probably, protectors?
Yeah. 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 So I think one of the things that helps me is first an understanding that I gained. So Richard Schwartz, the founder of IFS, wrote this book, You Are the One You've Been Waiting For.
Oh, it's my
Um,
favorite book. I
you
love it
love
so
that
much.
book. You
Of
love that
course,
book.
I
I love
love
that
it. I
book.
love it. It's the
Yes.
best.
Yes. Right. So one of the things that really helps me in that moment is understanding beforehand, before I'm even in that situation, right? That so often we are taught in this very sort of highly materialistic modern society to look to external things to kind of help us with our, we have these wounded parts inside us that feel like we're not lovable, we're too much, we're not enough, all of these things. And we learn so much to turn outward, whether we're looking to alcohol or other drugs or food or pornography or the internet or so many things on the outside to kind of fill that void inside. And, our parts look to those things in the external world to kind of soothe or distract or, help those wounded parts because it's too much. It's overwhelming. And we need something to regulate our nervous systems. And unfortunately, we also look to external relationships, romantic relationships, to kind of soothe that in a way, and that we turn to our romantic partners as potential redeemers or saviors that can tell us, that wounded part that believes that I am not lovable because they somehow took that message in from something in their family of origin, maybe the larger society that we grew up in. They look to that new romantic partner as the one who's going to change that for us. You're my new lover, my new partner. You're the one that is here to show me that I am lovable. And you need to show that to me over and over and over and over again for me to try to believe that, right?
Yeah, you're here to almost like to fix all my internal turbulences. Now you will be the one who will deliver this healing, love, comfort, safety, pleasure, everything, right? So we put our system, our parts put this romantic, right, new people in our life in that role, and it's a big role to take for another person.
Yes, it's a big role, and also it's not very human, right? Because if we have these young parts of us, these wounded parts that have this expectation that in every moment our partner is going to show up in this particular way, it's just not human because the person, is stressed out from their job, and the person is stressed out because of their parenting role or their role as a son or daughter or child of someone. And so we're not always at our best, and we're not always going to perform for our partner in this way to show them, oh, you are worthy, And so what do we do in those moments that our partner doesn't? So with intimacy from the inside out, to answer your question about what do we do when I'm sitting there with a couple and they're both coming in with parts that are dysregulated, maybe one person has a part that's blaming the other person, the other one is withdrawing. I'm just making this up, right? It's just one example. What do I do in that moment? Well, the first thing that I do is, rather than having them turn toward each other, I have them focus on me and on themselves. So I teach a lot of self-regulation skills, and this is something that we do in intimacy from the inside out. It's a differentiation model of therapy. And what we mean by that is it's a way that, and Toni Herbine-Blank, who created this model, she created it based on IFS and also some other things she had been trained in, imago therapy. It has influences from psychodynamic therapy, systems thinking, neuroscience, and so on. But the first thing is to differentiate, which means to unblend from parts. So if the two people are, one is in an angry part and the other is, hijacked by I mean like hijacked by the part, instead of being able to speak for the part, they're like, I hate you, you're this, you're that, right? And the other person is maybe pulling away, is to first get them to turn towards me, and for me to help them find the calm in the storm in their nervous systems, so that they can find some turn inward and find some way to get that sense of self-regulation from inside first, right? And so I might just completely stop the action, like, wait, we're gonna stop here. I'm very directive, right? We're gonna just stop.
I just want to pause here for a moment and let you know that if you feel called to go deeper on your healing journey and you need someone safe, someone who can truly support you, I'd love to invite you to explore my signature program, Untangle, or my one-to-one retreats and private healing work.
You will find all the details in the show notes or on my website, vladadesouza.com. Don't be shy. You're always welcome to connect with me in person through a complimentary call. And now back to the episode.
And I'm going to have you both turn towards me, and I'm just going to ask you to follow my directions, right? So there's kind of this directive role that I play in the beginning when there's a lot of conflict. And so by differentiation, what I mean is to help the person unblend from that part that's hijacking them, whether it's through anger or blaming or shaming, so that they can start to kind of turn inward and start to focus on themselves, which it doesn't seem like that's the way to achieve intimacy with an external relationship, is to start with intimacy on the inside, but it is actually what our parts need. They need to feel like there's some safety net somewhere, like where's the calm in the storm?
Yeah, you are pointing to such an important thing. It's a kind of self-awareness, being able to be there for yourself, being able to be, there for your parts and for your system, which is self-regulation, right? And very little couples go into that place, right? It becomes about another person. It's your fault. It becomes
Yes.
everything is because of you. It's finger pointing, right? And that's where I guess couples are getting stuck, because instead of focusing on what's actually happening inside, which part is hurting, which part is feeling not enough, which protector is, compensating for that and wants to blame another person. Without that self-awareness, we really cannot create relationship that will be healthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what we see time and time again, is that couples and people coming into relationship therapy, intimate partners coming into relationship therapy, are coming pointing their finger at the other person, right? They're pointing their finger and saying, it's just because, he's an angry person. It's because, they don't know how to do this and they're bad at that. And they're mean to me, and so and I'm no different from anyone else. I just want to say that, right? Because I'm a human being who's also been in couple therapy myself, and I know that I do the same thing. I go into couple therapy pointing my finger at the other person. It seems like it's human nature, right? To be somehow, our parts have a story, right? Our parts kind of carry a story that it's the other person's fault. And it's a way of, our protectors are focused not on protecting our partners, they're focused on protecting us, right? And so the way they do that is by pointing their finger at the other person. And it's my job as a couple therapist to kind of help them gently start to turn toward themselves, which is really not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
To guide an adult person to do the U-turn and to notice what's happening inside of them. I think that's guru, master Yoda level.
Right, exactly.
To do something like this, it's like, whoa.
Become enlightened right now.
Exactly. Just in the middle, of adult person just saying, oh, wait, maybe there is also something here. And that's this enlightening moments. And I just want to highlight that for me, in couples therapy, IFS informed or IFIO create a really transformational and very enlightening moments. Because yes, you do go with all this agenda. Like I yesterday told my husband on Wednesday, I'm going to tell everyone everything to our therapist. I'm going to tell everything that you did. And he's already thinking, uh-oh. But in those moments when a good skilled practitioner can notice this this dynamic, and even that you are aware, sometimes just gently guide you to sit with your, to sit with your system And when another person is witnessing that, when your partner is witnessing your system, witnessing your frustration, and then witnessing that sadness underneath it, and witnessing that little girl or little boy, that what I noticed brings this compassion to the room that was never there before.
Yeah. This is the potential. This is what can happen. And I can get really excited in certain moments about in couple therapy and relationship therapy, that it can be absolutely transformational when our parts get the experience that they can safely be in relationship with us and in relationship with someone else, and that there's enough curiosity and compassion in the room. Like that can be transformational. And it's hard to get there sometimes. It's hard to get there sometimes.
What would be your suggestion? I know, sometimes couples are getting into kind of stuck moments, but they don't consciously address it. It just becomes like this a boulder that starts living with the couple in their house, that grudge or that resentment or that bitterness or that thing, like it's almost becoming a thing, and it starts living with a couple. And then I guess, if a couple has kids start kind of picking up on that grudge or on that energy that wasn't processed, wasn't worked through. What would you suggest? What would be the moment for a couple to realize, we need to sort this out. We don't need to drag this boulder with us through, the rest of our lives. When is the right moment for a couple to go to therapy, couples therapy?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, most couples, on average, I think couples wait 6 or 7 years too long to go to couples therapy.
Oh.
That's what research shows, is that, from the very beginning, when they start to get into the troubled waters, rather than immediately going and looking for external support, people tend to try and manage it themselves and do it again and again and again. And it's usually by the time people actually get to couple therapy, their relationship is in pretty bad shape. So as couple therapists, we don't tend to see people coming in, just like, hey, we just had our first argument last week. I mean, that does happen. There are some couples that people who are in relationships who are a little bit more proactive than waiting 6 or 7 years. But on average, that is how long it takes. So I think usually couples or people in relationships, because not everyone is in like just two people in a relationship. Some relationships are polyamorous. So I just want to recognize that, right? Not all relationships are just couples, but usually what I would recommend is that when people feel like they're getting stuck, to really not wait years and years and years and years and have it become a deeply entrenched and grooved pattern. Because, couples often will have the same fight over and over and over again, whether it's about the dishes or it's about whether the mother-in-law should move into the house, or we should have children, or we should move, or we should open our relationship to other partners, or whatever the topic is. Like usually there's one kind of like the same parts get evolved again and again. And it can just feel like too much over and over again to have that wounding repeat itself. And it's often the same kind of wounding that we've experienced again and again in our families of origin. So I really think people often wait too long to go to individual therapy too. It's like, I'm at death's door and I'm going to kill myself if I don't get a therapist. It's like, don't wait that long. Don't wait until you're on that edge. Similarly, don't wait until your relationship is, kind of like at death's door, right? Ideally,
Yeah, absolutely. Because I see like a crack in this wholeness, because when the relationship create this one bubble and then there are these cracks, if you don't repair, right, you don't open, like you go to the dentist, they need to open, clean, repair, fix it, and
Yes.
put it back. in a way, it starts kind of going deeper and, influencing the whole system at the end of the day. But what is the most common problem couples come to you with usually? What do you see? What was the first thing they enter the room asking for?
Yeah. Usually because of what I was saying, that people wait, too long, it's that they're really stuck in their communication with each other. Like no matter what the topic is, and it varies from couple to couple, like what the presenting issue is. And sometimes it's many, sometimes it's just one, sometimes it has to do with money or sex or navigating issues with family or navigating parenthood for the first time, or, like on the surface, it could be about any number of external issues that the couple's navigating. But underneath that, whatever that fight is, there's often this kind of deeper fight that's happening that's more about, am I really loved by you? Do you really understand me? And if you really knew who I was, would you love me anyway? It's about these like deeper issues. And it's often about, whatever wounding happened early in childhood, it's about it playing out over and over again with this partner. So the argument might be about who did or didn't do the dishes, but in actuality, what the fight is really about is like, do you actually understand me? And do you actually love me? And am I worthy of your love?
Wow, this is a very different insight in a way, because when we start fixing the problem, usually people go to therapy, relationship therapy, right? It's about fixing the problem. Let's just fix it. We're stuck. Let's fix it. But what you're saying, there is that very kind of a deep current that is running all this time that people might not even have an idea that it's going, and that we are unconsciously choosing a partner, and we are unconsciously maybe trying to heal our childhood wounds in this relationship and get the needs that were not met when we were children through this person or through this relationship. But the person might not know that this is our needs and they were not met, and we behave like this is how we're trying to get those needs met, right? So it's very powerful what you said, that we need to understand what is really underneath those dishes fights at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. What are those unmet needs? What are those vulnerabilities? What is the meaning that we're assigning to you didn't do the dishes, right? Like it might on the surface seem like, maybe my partner just simply was busy that morning and, left the dishes in the sink. There's no other meaning to it, but my parts assign a meaning, right? It's because you don't love me. It's because I'm not lovable, right? And so one of the things that we do in relationship therapy is get to what are these meanings that parts are carrying, and where does that come from?
And how long does it take when a couple arrives to you to actually understand the pattern, what's behind all these arguments? How usually long you see people start, seeing that, wow, actually this meant this to me, and that's why I'm reacting this way.
Yeah, I think it really varies a lot, is my personal experience, that, it depends on a lot of things. Like it depends on how ready each partner is for the therapy itself, right? Like it's not always the right moment for relationship therapy. People are not always ready for it. People are not always ready and willing to do a U-turn, a YO U-turn, like turn toward themselves and see what my part might be in this dynamic. So, sometimes it's very quick. Sometimes it's like 1 or 2 or 3 therapy sessions, but oftentimes it takes months and sometimes even years. And I know that doesn't sound very encouraging, but it really depends on where people are starting from.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Because at the end of the day, it's also about understanding yourself, and not everyone are ready to understand. Sometimes,
Yeah.
right, sometimes the couple just wants to have this issue fixed. But what requires the issue to be fixed is the deeper self-analysis, right? Deeper self-understanding. And that may be not on the table today. One of the questions I'm curious, when you see a couple, do you have a sense of what are the signs that this couple has a potential to repair and move on with their relationship? And what are the signs that you see that probably it will be very, very difficult, and maybe even this couple will not make it to the other side? What are the signs you see, the positive ones and not so positive?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. You know, when people start to get a little bit curious and open to the possibility that if I want to change my partner and I want to change my relationship, I need to look at what my part is in this dynamic. When there's a little bit of a flavor, and it doesn't, sometimes it takes a while, but a little bit of curiosity starts to crack through of like, what might I be doing? And some responsibility taking, some level of like, oh, I'm open to being influenced. I'm open to hearing from my partner how I might be impacting them. And I'm open to hearing how I could do things differently. When there's a little bit of a curiosity, then I have some sense of hope that this couple therapy might go somewhere, or this relationship therapy might go somewhere. I have worked with a number of intimate partners where that curiosity, as much as I try to sort of help them cultivate it, they're just kind of not ready. And sometimes I know this because they don't even show up to the first therapy session, or one partner shows up and the other person doesn't show up. So it can look a lot of different ways. But yeah, I think most people are able to get there, some level of curiosity.
So
But not
you're
everyone
saying that our protective system that always says it's not me, it's the other person is the problem, needs to be able to be curious. What if it's not only that person? What if we are co-creating the situations on some level together? And that's why this might not be working. So there needs to be this idea that it's both, right? It's both it's both together.
Yes, this is a tango. This is a dance. And what am I doing? Is there something I'm doing to contribute to this dance? Right?
Okay. And I guess that the not so positive sign is when a person just, shuts down and doesn't want to even conceive an idea that you might also contribute to this in some way, consciously or unconsciously, or maybe they play a role, but they don't want to accept that or don't want to look at that. Is that right? That's not the kind of a negative sign.
Yeah, I think we also think oftentimes in monolithic ways, like, the whole person is not able to do it. I think it's a part of them that's not able to in that moment. So the question is there a way within the therapy of working with the parts that don't want to see that they play a part in this dance, right? Is there an openness to that, right? Is there an openness? And, sometimes it doesn't show up at the beginning because the person doesn't have enough access to their self energy that would enable that part to relax and to begin to see that they have a part in the process. So I don't take it at face value. Like if the person doesn't come in with curiosity, that they won't get there. It's just that some people are able to do that and some people aren't at that moment in time, which doesn't mean they wouldn't be able to later.
Yes, maybe one day, maybe even when you have a sense of, wow, this relationship might really end. And maybe that can be that moment where protecting oneself will be less important in the dynamic rather than just, okay, let me be curious, let me see this a little deeper, and let me see what my side of the street looks like as well. Probably when there is a higher stake, right? Because usually these parts, they just want to protect us, and that's their only intention and goal. And it depends where the pendulum will swing. Is it more important to protect myself, or is it more important to also save the relationship, I guess?
Yeah, so I think what you're speaking to is definitely a part of it. Like when the external stakes get higher can be a catalyst, right? It can be a positive crisis that can mobilize people to go through a positive change inside themselves and in the relationship. I also think another ingredient people need in their soup is support. And that's part of why therapy can be so helpful, or therapy isn't the only thing, right, that can be supportive of relationships. But I think sometimes people have this belief that they should just go it alone. They should just be able to do this without any support. And that can really get people into tricky waters. And there are a lot of cultural legacies that can play into that, right? Like this belief, like no one outside the family should know about the dirty laundry in the family, or things like that, or rugged individualism. I should be able to rely on myself. But in fact, we are relational humans. Humans are social animals, and we need community and we need support. So that's part of what therapists can and practitioners can offer.
It's so true that without support, I think it's just too much for one person to deal with sometimes. And I really want to go to the topic of legacy burdens. But before
Yes.
I go there, just one question. I see sometimes when there is a crack in the relationship, and we try to use our friends and family as a therapist, and we tell them our story. We tell all the things this person is so, he's doing all or she's doing all these things. And, we start giving all this context, and obviously it's from our side to our friends and family, and we try to recruit them to be our therapists and help us to fix this. Do you think that's helping? That's constructive, or there are other sides to that?
Well, it can be helpful at times, right, to enlist the help of friends and family. So it absolutely can be. I think the one thing that we find that can be complex, and part of why people come to me as a therapist, as opposed to, say, getting somebody's sister or somebody's, best friend to, is that, the people who are closest to us have their own stakes in things. So they're not neutral. And not that I'm neutral. I like to say that I'm multi-partial, because I try to really put myself in every single person's shoes. Like if I'm working with a big family, I'm trying to be partial to everyone, right? But in the same thing with a couple or, relationship. And I think the odds are that the person is going to have some stake in it themselves. And that just complicates things. So it's kind of a limitation of that.
Right, because our friends and family, then they love us so much, they will take our side, and maybe they will immediately cancel that other person, saying, "Oh my God, you should immediately leave." And this kind of advice is, sometimes like, okay, leave, finish, and things like that, without knowing the complexity, like you're saying, without being able to step in everyone's shoes and see the situation, sometimes might bring complexity instead of resolution to our couples things. And there is this thing, don't show your dirty laundry to everyone. And then, yeah, I call that suffering in silence kind of thing. Just that carrying that boulder on your shoulders alone, and no one knows anything. That's also
It's too
doesn't.
much. It can be too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's unpack for a second what is legacy burden before I ask you how these legacy burdens show up in our systems and relationship system.
Yeah. So a legacy burden, which is a really, really big and relevant thing to human intimate relationships, right? These are the burdens that our parts have taken on that aren't about our direct experience. So parts that have a direct burden like just a regular burden that a part carries might be something like, I'm not enough, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable. And that's a burden that the part took on through direct experience, right? Maybe they heard that from a caregiver or a teacher or someone that they had an early intimate relationship with. And that part took that belief on and took it to be truth, holds as a truth. So that's a burden the part carries. Sometimes the burdens that our parts carry are not from our direct experience. They're from the experience of our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, our great grandparents' generation, going back in our families of origin. And sometimes they're holding experiences from the broader culture. So, an example from our family might be, it's possible that my grandmother, and I'm just making this up, this is not actually about myself, but that my grandmother lived through a certain trauma. And the trauma that she went through influenced how she views human relationships. So let's say that my grandmother was raped. She might take on the belief that men are dangerous and pass that down to my father or my mother, and then that parent passes it down to me, this belief that men are dangerous. And so that's going to impact how I see human relationships with men specifically. So that's just one example, but also from the broader culture, sometimes there are legacy burdens that are passed down. So, for example, I work with a lot of immigrants in the United States, and there are some beliefs from the broader culture that come from, like, the broader culture hold legacy burdens such as racism or xenophobia, xenophobic views of immigrants. And that can impact how an immigrant sees themselves and sees other people. So, for example, in a relationship, that if I'm working with, let's say, a person who's an immigrant to the United States and a person who, going back generations and generations, their family has for many, many years lived in the United States, there might be a belief in the immigrant that they need to accommodate and acculturate and change who they are to mold to be more like what they believe the standard is of how people are in this particular country. And maybe the person who has lived here for more and more generations might have the belief that everyone should accommodate to who they are. And that's going to impact how those two people in a relationship are. And that's not something that came from just their own lived experience. It's also something that was passed down from the previous generations.
Right. So it becomes like a constellation. My background, my ancestors' background, your ancestors' background, and then when these backgrounds come together, we create kind of a constellation of a dynamic in relationship that not necessarily can be about our personal experiences, but like a broader cultural thing. And cultural topic is very a sensitive topic for me because I'm Ukrainian, and
yes.
So
yes.
xenophobia is there. And my husband is Portuguese. And our cultures couldn't be more different in so many ways. And
yes.
I would even say 80% of what we are trying to process and work through is the differences, the cultural burdens, the differences between our understanding of how relationships are formed. And I'm rebelling against how it is, being formed in their land, and he's rebelling how it is being in our land. It's actually such a huge thing that sometimes people don't take super seriously, but it forms a constellation, and the relationship can go one or another way simply because of the backgrounds.
Absolutely. I work with a lot of couples in intercultural and interreligious relationships, and it's a very complex terrain to navigate because the meanings are different, right? Like, if I get loud and express myself fully, I mean, is that a fuller expression of who I am? Or like if I'm loud and honest and brutally honest, like is that
Oh,
showing love, or is that being disrespectful and rude? Like these kinds of meanings, right? And I think, like I was talking about how parts just ascribe a meaning to, like you didn't do the dishes this morning, that means you don't love me. That's a story my part is creating, right? Similarly, like if you say this in a very loud way, does that mean that you don't respect me? Like that's a story the part creates. And in intercultural relationships, that's a lot to navigate about what these meanings are.
it's a lot to navigate. And I'm just really curious, how do you sit with these differences? How is it for you when you see these two worlds that are
Yeah.
built on fundamentally different principles, values, views, and then
Mhm.
you need to become the priest to marry these two worlds that just don't have anything, like it's opposite, right? What means in my world means opposite in your world, and we so ingrained, it's in such a deep level. This meanings are so deeply sitting inside of our systems. Like for me, it's like a Slavic
Yeah.
culture, for example, right? And
Yeah.
you can kill me, but that Slavic part is just gonna stay. And she's not gonna go anywhere with her values, principles, and with her vision of what's okay, what's not okay. She's just not going anywhere, and she's not flexible in any
Right.
way. So it's very, very peculiar moment. How do you sit between these two worlds? How do you help these worlds to create bridges?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think so intimacy from the inside out has this way of doing this, which is courageous. It's called courageous communication. And it's just a particular, I mean, it's not specifically for intercultural differences, but it's a tool that I use when people are trying to understand each other's experience, because what can happen is our protective parts, have a story about our partner and a meaning that it assigns to. So in IFIO therapy, when we slow things down and use this tool of courageous communication, which is a whole sort of protocol that it's a specific protocol of how to support partners to hear each other and to speak in a different way and to listen in a different way, that is more from a place of vulnerability and less from a place of protective parts. And it's a tool that can really help people to hear what, like when I did that thing at the party that you think means this, it actually means this within my cultural context. Like in my family, if I was at a party and I did that thing, this is the meaning that my family would make of that. Not just my family, but people in my culture, and to really hear each other in a different way. So that's kind of a simple answer, but I think it's a process of helping people to unblend from their protective system so that they can actually hear what the other person's experience is in a different way.
Right. Like I'm hearing that you're saying we need to become a little bit more sophisticated and not jump to conclusions and actually be curious and ask, so I noticed you doing this, and for me this means that you are this and this, and
Yes,
that's the
this is the
situation.
meaning that I ascribe to it. Yeah, my part ascribed to it.
Yeah. And how is it in, in this part of the world when you guys are doing this? Is this the same? Is this bad?
Right.
Or is this good? Is it celebrated? Is it suppressed? Is it because in every
Right.
culture, it's a
Right.
very, very, very different story, very different dynamic. So we need to be more sophisticated instead of labeling, right? We need to understand, what does it mean for you from your side of the world?
Yeah. And I think whether we're in an intercultural relationship, or I mean, all relationships are intercultural on some level, right?
Mm.
Because even if we're not from the other side of the world, we all come from different subcultures, right? So I think a kind of a good rule to live by, or law to live by, is curiosity. Like the more we can cultivate curiosity in our romantic and other relationships, and ask questions, right? Like genuine curiosity. Like, I'm really curious what the meaning for you was. Like, this is the meaning my parts ascribe to it, but I'm curious for you. Like, I don't know if this is a cultural thing. I don't know if this is just, a difference in this or that or the other thing, personality, or if this is how you did things in your family, but it's actually different from the broader culture that you grew up in. It's just like a little funny thing that your family does, or if this is like part of being, part of this culture or this religion or this, what the reasons are. But just getting curious and asking questions is always a good default, I think.
It's so interesting because everyone think relationship is very straightforward. We see a person, we fall in love, and it's great, and then
Yes.
everything
Wouldn't
will
that
follow.
simple story? Happily ever after.
And then you realize that, oh, there is cultural burdens and differences. There is religious burdens and differences. There is legacy burdens and differences. There is our parts. And there is just enough material for the rest of our lives to work through, to actually be able to create a healthy and thriving relationship. But from all this conversation, what I understood is that to actually be able to go through the stages of processing these layers of complexity of two different worlds marrying together is curiosity, and willingness to understand, listen, ask questions, and also be able to take a look at your parts, at your system.
Yes, absolutely. And I would just add to that compassion, curiosity and compassion. Like, what is it that my partner went through before they even met me? Maybe this might have absolutely nothing to do with me. If I can slow down and get curious and compassionate about what their experience has been, I might learn some things that it has nothing to do with how bad I am or how I'm messing up or how they don't love me. Maybe it has nothing to do with me. Maybe it has to do with a story that happened long before they met me. So just an openness to learning about that, to really learning about your partner, and to not make assumptions, right? To not make cultural assumptions, and to be compassionate for what they have lived through, I think is a good recipe for relationship success.
I really love this recipe. And it's a recipe of hope, because one relationship is like if it's a healthy cell, it creates other healthy cells around it, and basically that's what the world stands on, is this healthy cells. Us, if we can also do this inside of us, understand ourselves, be compassionate to ourselves, be curious with ourselves, we can do this with our significant one or ones, and then we can probably do it with our kids, and maybe we can do it with other people all over, right, the world. So it's interesting that this process, it has this kind of a fractalish way of impact from the inside to the microcosm to the macrocosm kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think just to really emphasize that it starts with intimacy from the inside out, which is this model of couple therapy that I am a trainer in, that I feel so lucky to be a part of, that really our first intimacy is between ourself and our parts. And if we can do a lot of internal healing and look inside first before pointing our finger outside. There's a song, "Before you accuse me, take a look at yourself," like just really open to the possibility that there's something we can shift inside before we point our finger outside.
Yes. So it starts from the inside out, which, to be honest, in generation of my ancestors, There was no such thing. There was no intimacy from the inside out. There was just take it or leave it, conflicts, divorces. I would just say lots and lots of unconscious way of being, relating, creating families, bringing kids to the world. And this new, ways of being compassionate and understanding that we are so multi-layered, or we have so many parts with IFS, with intimacy from the inside out, just gives so much hope too, that we can still correct the course, and that generations in front of us will, learn and also evolve in a different way. So it gives me a lot of hope for us as humans.
It's beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Joya, it was a really, really helpful and nourishing conversation. And I have more questions in my list, but I know that we are in time, and I would love to probably one day talk to you again about this complex but such a beautiful work that you do. I think couples or relationship therapists are our heroes. They take the hit. They like firefighters. They stand in the middle of the two fires, and with skill and compassion, able to put it down somehow and create hope and create more compassion between people. So thanks to you and for bringing this very beautiful model to the world. And I hope to learn from you one day, and definitely invite you again for the episode.
Oh, thank you so much. It was so beautiful. And I also want to say thank you to Toni Herbine-Blank, who is the creator of Intimacy from the Inside Out, and so lucky that I get to be a trainer in this model. So thank you so much. This has really been a meaningful time.
And right before we complete for today, just if there is one helpful advice to couples that probably today are in the thick of it, and they're considering doing therapy, or they're just trying to find a way how to navigate the differences and the conflict, any advice that you would give, where they should begin?
Yeah, I just want to say, I know it can feel hopeless in some moments. Parts can become hijacked by this feeling of hopelessness or fear that maybe that there's no hope. But and I know it can be hard to access therapy. Sometimes financially, there can be barriers. Logistically, how do we fit this into our schedules? But really, to find a way to not be alone with your struggle and to get some help, because we are relational beings and we do need the support of the tribe. I don't think we're meant to be alone with these issues and these challenges. And so really to get support, to reach out.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you feel called to deepen this journey, you'll find everything you need in the show notes, including a link to a book complimentary call with me and more details about my work and today's guest. May you continue walk your path with clarity, courage, and self-led grace. Until soon.